The truest version of a person does not appear when life is easy. It appears when something is at stake, when the door is closing, when the money is on the table, when pride has been touched, when desire is stronger than discipline. That is when the mask loosens. And if you know how to watch, you will see more in one difficult moment than you could see in 10 years of polite conversation. So stay with me until the end, because the first few moments reveal character, but the later ones reveal something deeper. Why so many people mistake performance for sincerity, and why wise people do not judge by words alone. And if this kind of reflection helps you see life more clearly, consider subscribing. Not for noise, not for excitement, but for quiet clarity in a world that keeps rewarding appearances. Welcome back to Guiguzi Strategic Wisdom. I'm David Welbeck, the writer behind this video. Today, I want to talk about 3 moments when a person's true character comes out. But to understand them fully, we have to look at 5 faces of those moments, because character rarely reveals itself in a single dramatic scene. More often, it leaks out. It shows in timing, in restraint, in how someone handles pressure, advantage, disappointment, and power. A person can speak beautifully when nothing is being tested. That is not character. That is presentation. A person can be generous when it costs nothing. That is not kindness. That is convenience. A person can seem loyal when loyalty is easy, patient when there is no delay, humble when there is no temptation, and honest when there is no price to pay. But the old strategic mind understood something that modern life keeps forgetting. People are not revealed by what they claim to value. They are revealed by what they protect when their instincts are awakened. Think about it. Most people do not become different under pressure. Pressure simply removes the decoration. It strips away the soft language, the manners, the carefully arranged personality, and leaves behind the basic shape of the inner life. The first moment when true character comes out is when a person does not get what they want. There is an old kind of wisdom that says, watch the hand that reaches, but watch even closer when the hand comes back empty. Because desire is a powerful teacher. Desire shows you what someone worships, but disappointment shows you whether they have self-control. In ordinary life, people can appear calm, balanced, even mature. They can talk about fairness, patience, timing, and respect. But when the answer becomes no, when the promotion goes to someone else, when the relationship does not move the way they hoped, when a friend sets a boundary, when a door stays closed, then something deeper begins to rise. This is where most people get it wrong. They think disappointment creates bitterness. It does not. Disappointment exposes the bitterness that was already there. I have seen people lose an opportunity and quietly adjust. I have seen others lose the same opportunity and begin to poison the room around them. They blame. They accuse. They rewrite the story so they are always the victim. They say the world is unfair, but what they really mean is, I did not get what I believed I deserved. That is not pain alone. That is ego dressed as suffering. Look at reality for what it is. When someone is denied what they want, instinct pushes them toward control. The inner child says, take it back, punish them, make them regret it. The mature person feels that same instinct, but does not obey it immediately. They let the feeling pass through them without handing it the steering wheel. That is the difference. Not that wise people feel nothing. Wise people feel everything, but they know feeling is not command. In friendship, This appears when you say no to a favor. Some people understand. Some people quietly take note and continue loving you. But some people become cold, sarcastic, distant. They do not say, "I am angry because I could not use you." They say, "You changed." No. You set a boundary, and the boundary revealed the arrangement. In family, it appears when someone does not receive the attention, money, praise, or obedience they expected. Suddenly their love becomes conditional. Suddenly their kindness becomes a ledger. Suddenly everything they gave you is brought back as evidence in a trial you did not know you were attending. In work, it appears when a person is passed over. Some people improve. Some people study the moment. They ask what they missed, what they can learn, how they can sharpen their skill. But others begin to undermine the person who was chosen. They gossip in corners. They smile in meetings. They congratulate with their mouth while resentment eats through their eyes. Do you see the turning point here? The issue is not whether someone feels disappointment. Everyone does. The issue is whether disappointment turns them into someone unsafe. A person's true character comes out when desire is blocked, because blocked desire is one of life's sharpest mirrors. It shows whether someone has depth or only appetite. It shows whether they can endure delay without becoming ugly. It shows whether they see other people as human beings or merely as doors to what they want. And this is why wise people do not trust sweetness too quickly. Sweetness before desire is tested may only be strategy. Kindness before rejection may only be hope. Warmth before denial may only be a negotiation. The closing insight is simple, but it takes years to accept. Do not judge a person by how they treat you when you are saying yes. Watch how they treat you when you finally say no. The second moment when true character comes out is when a person gains an advantage. A person denied desire may reveal their weakness, but a person given power reveals their direction. There is a strategic truth that I have learned to respect. When a person climbs higher, their shadow does not disappear. It grows longer. Power does not always mean a title. It can be money. It can be beauty. It can be influence. It can be information. It can be social approval. It can be the simple fact that someone knows you need them more than they need you. The moment a person has leverage, you will see whether they have restraint. That is not because power corrupts every person. It is because power removes the need to pretend. When someone has no advantage, they often behave well because they must. They are polite because they need cooperation. They are humble because they are still being evaluated. They are generous because generosity helps them belong. But when they gain the upper hand, the hidden question appears. Now that they can get away with more, what will they allow themselves to do? The real question is not, can this person be nice? The real question is, can this person remain fair when unfairness would benefit them? That is where character becomes visible. I remember a man I once worked with years ago. I will call him Marcus. We were in a small office, not glamorous, not powerful, just one of those places where people stayed late, drank weak coffee, and pretended the fluorescent lights were not slowly draining their souls. Marcus was friendly to everyone when he first arrived. He remembered birthdays. He laughed easily. He asked about people's families. And because he seemed warm, people trusted him quickly. And then he was promoted. Not to some great position, just enough authority to schedule shifts, approve small requests, and speak directly to upper management. But that little bit of power changed the weather around him. He began delaying approvals for people he disliked. He gave better hours to those who praised him. He repeated private conversations in ways that made himself look important. When someone challenged him, he did not argue openly. He made their life inconvenient. Small things, always small enough to deny. That is how fake people often operate when they gain leverage. They do not always become loud villains. They become selective. They become subtle. They make you feel the cost of not pleasing them. And that taught me something I have never forgotten. Some people are not kind. They are merely powerless. Once they gain a little control, they do not become new people. They become honest people. Think about it. In marriage, advantage appears when one person earns more, knows more, has more social support, or feels less afraid of losing the relationship. That is when tenderness may become superiority. That is when someone may begin to speak with contempt, because they believe the other person has fewer options. In friendship, advantage appears when one person becomes more successful. Some people remain grounded. They remember who sat with them before the applause. But others begin to measure every old relationship against their new status. They become too busy, too important, too polished. They do not directly say, "I now think I am above you." They simply make you feel it. In social competition, advantage appears when a person has access to a room others want to enter. Watch how they treat those outside the door. Watch whether they open it with dignity or stand in front of it like a little king. This is why mature people pay attention to how someone treats those who cannot reward them. The waiter, the assistant, the quiet relative, the struggling friend, the person with no influence. Because when there is no benefit in being kind, kindness becomes evidence. And when there is no punishment for being cruel, cruelty becomes evidence too. The consequence of misjudging this is heavy. If you trust someone only because they are pleasant when they are equal to you, you may be shocked when life gives them leverage. You may find out too late that their politeness was not rooted in respect. It was rooted in need. So that is not the same thing. A wise person understands that power is one of life's great examinations. It asks, "Now that you can press harder, will you? Now that you can take more, will you? Now that others are watching you, will you protect your image or protect your integrity?" And the answer is rarely spoken. It is shown. The third moment when true character comes out is when a person is afraid of losing face. This one is more subtle, because fear of losing face does not always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like anger. Sometimes it looks like confidence. Sometimes it looks like righteousness. Sometimes it looks like someone suddenly becoming very loud because they cannot bear the silence where truth might enter. There is a quiet principle in strategic living. When pride is wounded, the untrained person attacks the mirror. Meaning this: if reality shows someone a picture they do not like, they may not correct themselves. They may try to break the thing that revealed them. Think about it. A person can talk about honesty until honesty embarrasses them. A person can praise accountability until accountability points in their direction. A person can say they value truth until truth threatens their image. Then the mask changes. This is where most people get it wrong. They believe character is shown by how someone behaves when they are praised. But praise is easy to carry. Criticism is heavier. Correction is heavier. Being seen clearly is heavier. The real question is not, can this person accept admiration? The real question is, can this person remain human when they are exposed? In modern life, So much of our social world is built around image. People learn to curate themselves. They learn what to say, when to smile, how to sound emotionally intelligent, how to appear humble while still directing attention back to themselves. And because we live surrounded by performance, many people confuse a polished personality with a stable character. But the moment someone is corrected, misunderstood, challenged, or embarrassed, the inner structure begins to show. Some people pause. They may feel the sting, but they do not let the sting become a weapon. They ask themselves, is there something here I need to see? That is maturity. Not perfection. Not weakness. Maturity. Other people cannot do that. The moment their pride is touched, they make the room pay. At work, this happens in meetings when someone's idea is questioned. A clear-minded person can separate the idea from the self. They can say, maybe I missed something. Let's look at it. But an insecure person hears a question as an insult. They turn defensive. They start pulling rank. They exaggerate your tone. They make it about respect instead of truth. That is not leadership. That is insecurity wearing a badge. In family, this happens when an older relative cannot admit they were wrong. Instead of saying, I hurt you, they say, after everything I did for you. Instead of listening, they bring up sacrifice. They move the conversation away from the wound and toward their image as the wounded one. That is not love. That is control of the story. In marriage, this happens when one person raises a real issue, calmly, carefully, after holding it in for too long. And instead of meeting the issue, the other person attacks the delivery. Why are you bringing this up now? You always make me the problem. You're too sensitive. You're ungrateful. Do you see the turning point here? The topic disappears. The truth disappears. The relationship disappears. All that remains is the ego trying to survive. And this is why fear of losing face reveals so much. Because when a person cares more about appearing innocent than becoming honest, they will sacrifice trust to protect image. They will confuse apology with defeat. They will treat vulnerability like humiliation. And over time, the people around them stop telling the truth. They learn to manage the person. That is a lonely way to live, even if the person never admits it. The consequence is slow damage. When someone cannot handle being seen clearly, every relationship around them becomes shallow. People walk carefully. They hide their real thoughts. They laugh at the right times. They avoid certain topics. They give peace on the surface while respect dies underneath. And this is where a wise person must be careful. Because fake people often want admiration without examination. They want closeness without accountability. They want trust without transparency. They want the benefits of intimacy while avoiding the discipline that intimacy requires. Look at reality for what it is. A person who cannot be corrected cannot be trusted with closeness. Not because they are evil, not because they have no good qualities, but because sooner or later, truth will be required, and they will punish the person who brings it. The closing insight is this: when someone is embarrassed, do not only watch their words, watch what they try to protect. If they protect truth, there is hope. If they protect image at all costs, you are dealing with someone who may choose appearances over you. The fourth moment when true character comes out is when someone else is weak, absent, or unable to defend themselves. This may be the clearest test of all. Because many people behave well in front of strength. They respect those with status, charm those with influence, and show restraint when there may be consequences. But when the other person is tired, grieving, inexperienced, dependent, isolated, or simply not in the room, the hidden nature of the heart becomes easier to see. A person's treatment of the vulnerable is a map of their inner world. That is not a sentimental idea. It is a strategic one. Those who prey on weakness are not always obvious. They do not always shout. They do not always threaten. Often, they study the imbalance. They sense who needs approval, who is afraid of conflict, who is desperate to belong, who is too kind to push back. Then they begin to take more than they would ever dare take from someone stronger. This is where instinct becomes dangerous. Human beings are social creatures, but we are also competitive creatures. Underneath the polite surface, people are constantly reading status, safety, opportunity, and risk. A disciplined person notices weakness and feels responsibility. An immature person notices weakness and feels temptation. That is the dividing line. In friendship, this appears when one person is going through a hard season. Maybe they lost a job. Maybe they are lonely. Maybe they are less confident than usual. A true friend becomes more careful with them, not less. But a fake person may use that season to feel superior. They offer help that quietly humiliates. They give advice that makes themselves look wise. They use your vulnerability as currency in conversations with others. That is not concern. That is feeding on access. In work, this appears when a new employee does not know the rules yet. Mature people guide them. Insecure people use them. They dump tasks on them, withhold information, then blame them for mistakes. They call it learning the hard way. But often it is just cowardice passed down as culture. In family, it appears when someone knows another person cannot easily leave. A child, an aging parent, a spouse without financial independence, a sibling who always keeps the peace. This is where some people become most revealing, because they believe the relationship itself protects them from consequences. And when people believe there will be no consequences, you meet the part of them that manners usually hide. Think about it. It is easy to be gentle with someone who can embarrass you publicly. It is easy to be respectful towards someone who can affect your income. It is easy to be generous towards someone whose opinion you need. But what about the person who cannot do anything for you? What about the person no one is watching you treat? What about the one who trusted you enough to be defenseless? That is where character speaks without needing a microphone. The consequence of missing this sign is painful. If you admire someone for how they treat the powerful, you may bring them close without realizing they are only disciplined in front of consequences. Later, when you are weak, tired, grieving, dependent, or emotionally attached, you may discover the truth. They were not kind, they were careful, and careful is not the same as good. I have learned that wise people pay attention to small cruelties. The joke made at someone's expense when that person is not around. The private detail shared for entertainment. The impatience towards someone who is trying their best. The way a person speaks to someone who is confused. The satisfaction they seem to feel when another person is reduced. These things matter. Not because every small flaw makes someone fake, but because patterns matter. A single bad moment may be stress. A repeated pattern is character. Do you see the turning point here? True character is not revealed only in grand betrayals. It is revealed in the quiet permission someone gives themselves when another person has less power. The closing insight is this. When someone is weak, wise people become more protective. Fake people become more calculating. And if you cannot tell the difference, life will teach you in a language you will not forget. The fifth moment when true character comes out is when waiting becomes necessary. This may sound simple, but it is one of the deepest tests of all. Because almost anyone can look disciplined for a short time. Almost anyone can make a promise when the reward feels close. Almost anyone can act loyal, patient, spiritual, committed, or mature when the road is smooth and the timeline is short. But waiting changes people. Waiting removes performance. Waiting stretches desire. Waiting introduces doubt. Waiting makes people face the part of themselves that wants control right now. There is a line I often return to in my own life. The impatient person mistakes delay for defeat. The wise person studies delay as information. That is not passive. That is strategic. In life, timing is not decoration. Timing is reality. The right thing done at the wrong time can still destroy you. The right person trusted too quickly can still cost you years. The right ambition pursued without restraint can still turn into self-betrayal. This is where most people get it wrong. They think patience means doing nothing. But true patience is not laziness. It is disciplined attention. It is the ability to watch, to prepare, to listen, to measure the room, to understand the season, and to keep your inner life from being dragged around by every desire that knocks on the door. The impatient person cannot do this. They need an answer today. They need reassurance today. They need recognition today. They need revenge today. They need proof today. And because they cannot wait, they reveal what rules them. Not wisdom, not clarity, not love, instinct. In ambition, waiting reveals whether someone is building or merely chasing. A mature person can work without applause for a long time. They can refine their craft in private. They can accept that certain doors open slowly, and some doors should not be forced open at all. But an impatient person burns through relationships, exaggerates their value, copies others, flatters the powerful, and calls every delay unfair. It is not because the world owes them nothing. It is because they cannot bear the distance between who they are and who they want to appear to be. In relationships, waiting reveals whether affection is real or merely hungry. Someone may say they care about you, but what happens when you need time? What happens when you are not ready? What happens when your life is complicated, when your heart is cautious, when your trust has to be earned slowly? Some people respect the pace of another person's soul. Others pressure, guilt, withdraw, punish, or seduce. They call it passion. They call it certainty. But often, it is just desire refusing discipline. That is not love. That is appetite in romantic clothing. In family, waiting appears when a person has to accept that another person's life does not unfold according to their expectations. A parent waits for a child to find their way. A sibling waits for an apology that may never come. An adult child waits for an aging parent to change, then slowly realizes that some people grow older without becoming more honest. Time teaches hard lessons, and one of the hardest is this: not everyone who stays near you is loyal, and not everyone who leaves you is false. Sometimes the person who leaves is the one who finally stops betraying themselves. Sometimes the person who stays is only staying because there is still something to take. Look at reality for what it is. Waiting reveals the difference between attachment and devotion. Attachment says, "I need you to soothe me now." Devotion says, "I will not violate what matters just because I am afraid." Attachment clings. Devotion protects. Attachment panics. Devotion breathes. And in the pressure of modern life, where everyone is chasing timing, visibility, money, status, marriage, success, youth, and proof that they did not waste their years. Waiting becomes a furnace. It burns away fantasy. You begin to see who can remain clear-minded when life does not move according to plan. You see who becomes manipulative when they feel insecure. You see who betrays small promises because the reward is delayed. You see who abandons their values because someone else seems to be getting ahead faster. This is where fate and character meet. Fate gives people seasons they did not choose. Character decides what they become inside those seasons. A person who cannot wait will often choose the wrong moment. They will speak too soon, trust too fast, strike too hard, leave too early, stay too long, spend what should have been saved, reveal what should have been protected, and chase what should have been allowed to pass. And the cost is not always immediate. Sometimes the cost comes years later, when they realize they built a life around impulses they should have outgrown. The closing insight is this: watch how people behave when time does not obey them. The one who can wait without becoming bitter, desperate, or cruel has already won a quiet battle most people lose every day. Now bring all of this down from philosophy into lived reality. You will meet people who seem loyal until they are disappointed. You will meet people who seem humble until they are given advantage. You will meet people who seem honest until their image is threatened. You will meet people who seem kind until someone weaker depends on them. You will meet people who seem patient until life makes them wait. And if you are not careful, you will mistake performance for sincerity. This is how people get hurt. Not because they are foolish, not because they never saw the signs. Often they saw them, but explained them away. They called control love. They called impatience passion. They called gossip concern. They called arrogance confidence. They called emotional punishment hurt feelings. They called repeated disrespect stress. And slowly, they lost themselves trying to hold on to someone whose true character had already introduced itself. The real question is not whether someone can impress you. The real question is whether they can be trusted when instinct wakes up. When they want something, when they have power, when they feel embarrassed, when someone else is vulnerable, when time makes them wait. That is where the truth lives. So what truly reveals a fake person? A fake person is revealed when the benefit of pretending becomes smaller than the pressure of instinct. When there is no reward for kindness, no audience for humility, no advantage in patience, no punishment for cruelty, no immediate gain in loyalty, then the performance begins to crack. That crack is the truth. What should a wise person actually watch for? Not just words, not just charm, not just how someone behaves when they want approval. Watch patterns under pressure. Watch how they handle no. Watch how they carry power. Watch what they do when corrected. Watch how they treat the weak. Watch whether they can wait without trying to control everyone around them. Because character is not a sentence someone says about themselves. Character is the trail they leave behind when life does not give them the script they wanted. And why do so many people mistake performance for sincerity? Because performance is loud, polished, and immediate. Sincerity is quiet, slow, and consistent. Performance knows how to enter a room. Sincerity knows how to remain when the room becomes difficult. Performance makes promises. Sincerity pays the cost. Performance wants to be seen. Sincerity can survive being unseen. Think about it. A mature and wise person is not a saint. They are not perfect. They still have fear, desire, pride, loneliness, anger, and regret. They still make mistakes. They still feel the pull of old wounds and the pressure of difficult seasons. But they know what matters. They know what to protect. They know what to let go of. They know when to wait. They know when to act. They do not confuse every impulse with truth. They do not treat every opportunity as destiny. They do not turn every wound into a weapon. They do not sacrifice their long-term peace for a short-term emotional victory. That is wisdom in human form, not perfection. Direction, not coldness. Composure, not weakness. Restraint. And when you begin to see people this way, you become less easily fooled. You stop chasing explanations that insult your own intelligence. You stop begging masks to become faces. You stop confusing closeness with trust, history with loyalty, and emotion with love. You learn to watch, quietly, patiently, without hatred. Because the goal is not to become suspicious of everyone. The goal is to become clear, to see people as they are, not as your hope, fear, loneliness, or desire needs them to be. That clarity may cost you certain illusions, but it will save your life from certain people. Thank you for staying with me until the end. This is Guiguzi strategic wisdom, and if this reflection gave you language for something you have lived through, subscribe if you have not already. Share it with someone who may need it, and leave a comment with your own thoughts or experience, because sometimes one honest sentence from another person helps someone else finally see what they have been trying not to see. Continue the journey with this channel, not to become harder, but to become wiser. I'm David Welbeck, the writer behind these videos. I'll see you in the next one.